Welcome, Legionnaires, to the Long Live the Legion podcast, where we talk about the Legion of Superheroes comic book team and break subjects down so that whether you're just out of the Legion Academy or you're a longtime veteran, you get to know the team a little bit better. I'm your co-host, Jim.
And I'm your co-host, Jay.
And welcome to episode number 19. So there's a lot of stuff going on the mission monitor board today. What's going on, Jay?
So we've got a ton of stuff to talk about today. I just wanted to say, I can't believe we're at episode 19. This is awesome. Just wanted to say that to start. And so I just have to say, because we're at episode 19, thanks to everybody who's been listening and supporting this.
100%.
It kind of hits me every once in a while. I'm like, wow, we've been doing this and this is great. On the mission monitor board today, we are going to talk about the White Triangle saga that happened during the post-Zero Hour Legion in their first year. And we're really going to focus a lot of attention on Legionnaires Annual number 2, which was the end chapter of this big storyline. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, after everything is rebooted post-Zero Hour, and we've got writers Mark Waid, Tom Peyer, and Tom McCraw, they are plotting out basically the building of the Legion. They're plotting out getting all the members together. And right from the very beginning, they're setting the groundwork for this whole White Triangle storyline. So, Jim, what is White Triangle? Like, what's going on here?
So you can really distill it down very, very distinctly by saying the White Triangle in this iteration of the Legion is basically a bunch of Nazi fascists who are basically against any kind of diversity or interspecies relationships, anything like that. They are definitely the bad guys. So they're the Nazis to the Legion's Indiana Jones. So
it's this very xenophobic group, which is spread, I think, on multiple planets. So
yes.
Did it start on Daxam, or is Daxam just...
That's a good question. They seem to intimate that it does begin from Daxam and spreads from there, but they don't really say one way or another. It's just this hate group that infiltrates kind of across the UP, but mainly on Earth and on Daxam.
Well, I guess it's kind of like the Dark Circle, White Triangle. We didn't really know the background of it. They're just this sort of nebulous organization that's causing a bunch of trouble. And so they're against anyone who's alien. So if your only introduction to the Legion was, say, that Action Comics story where Superman goes forward in time and they're dealing with the xenophobia, it's the same kind of idea, only it was done, 15 years earlier?
Yeah. About 10 years earlier. 10 years?
Okay.
Yeah.
And the premise is, and what makes it sort of a really interesting twist is one of the Legionnaires is actually a member of the White Triangle, which is Andromeda, who is the Daxamite member, the Supergirl analog, Laurel Gand, if you read the 5 years later. So she's actually grew up in a White Triangle camp, learning all of this xenophobic nonsense and believing it completely. So she will not touch an alien. So here's another one that I was kind of curious about was it she hates anybody who isn't Daxamite, or was it an actual, she just hates anybody who isn't white?
No, in her case, it was anybody that was alien, because if you recall in the story, she would only interact with people wearing a trans suit.
Yes.
Right. So which was also partly to keep the lead out of her system as well, because Daxamites are allergic to lead. Lead is very prevalent on Earth. But the other reason was because she didn't have to touch anybody else with her own skin.
Yeah. And there's a big moment when they're fighting Tangleweb, which is this, spider alien creature, and then all the other aliens on Tangleweb's planet. And she refuses to help and refuses to touch anybody. They make it very, very clear that she hates anybody who doesn't look like her or who isn't from her planet. So it's a really interesting take on the Legion, because historically the Legion has always been about diversity and inclusion and keeping everybody together and working with different alien races. And suddenly we have a character who is the exact opposite. And ironically enough, the most powerful member of the team.
Yes.
Right.
Minor detail right there. Yeah. So like you kind of mentioned, the seeds for this story were sown from the very, very get-go. So 0 Hour happens, the 0 issues release from the Legion of Superheroes number 0 and Legionnaires 0, which retell the beginnings of the story. And of course, we're treated to the whole RJ Brand gets attacked and the kids save them. But the interesting little twist in this scenario is that those particular people are attacking RJ Brand because he's invented Stargates, and Stargates are this new way for the people of the United Planets to to interact with each other, to mingle with each other. And these people are very much pro-racial segregation, and this is a threat to them. The attackers, the people attacking RJ Brand in LSH 0, have these triangles on their uniform, interestingly enough, right? And so, although I think they're pink triangles in the original story. So this idea, this seed of this racist group was planted from the very beginning. So they knew, the creative team here had planned out where this was going from the moment that they started writing these stories, which I think was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a great subplot that's running through this whole series. And then they start through this whole first year. And when they start ramping it up, like there's this big moment where there's this fight outside a club, and the issue is supposed to be sort of this relaxing, like, hey, it's just a girls' night out and they're having fun. And then suddenly it takes this dramatic turn that nobody sees coming. And then the bigger one is a couple of issues later when they actually attack one of Triad's bodies and put her in the hospital. And so now, the White Triangle group is no longer just this background force, but is now moving forward and getting more aggressive.
Yeah. So the stakes end up getting raised as time goes on. So, because like you said, first they just attack some random alien outside a nightclub, then they attack Triad, one of the people we're supposed to care about, puts her in the hospital, puts them in the hospital basically, because then they have to merge, and in order to heal. And then the attacks keep on getting more intense as we go through this year, to the point of RJ Brand is working to bring in this other planet into the UP, and something really drastic happens.
Yeah, so this was, I thought of all the changes that they made for the reboot, this was one of my, and I hate to say favorite because it's such a horrible story, but they took the idea of Element Lad's home planet, which is Trom, and it's a planet of people who can change elements and who can control matter. And in the old comics, Roxxas, sorry, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong.
That's how I pronounce it.
Roxxas or Rojas or however you want to say it. I'm going to say Roxxas because I've learned I mispronounce everything and I don't really care. Was just like a criminal who just wanted he wanted these guys to make them gold. And then when he didn't, he killed everybody. And in this one, Roxxas is now a Daxamite ambassador to the UP, and he's much more powerful. And his group of Daxamites, which have now realized, like, hey, as soon as we get off Daxam, we're Superman, essentially. They're flying through the universe, killing aliens. They show up on Trom and they burn the planet to ashes, killing.
Yeah, it's a shocking scene. It's an absolutely shocking scene.
It's one of the, again, I hate to say it's one of the best stories of this entire reboot run, but I think it is. Like, it's so dramatic, it works so well, it hits you so hard, even if it's coming, and it still hits really hard because Mark Waid's scripting this, and all three of them are plotting, and I think they just set up a great, here's the characters, now you care about them, here they are, essentially in their church praying, and then suddenly
nothing.
We have genocide, and it's a punch to the gut. And it works really, really well.
And I'll tell you something. So this is my personal experience with this story was, again, this is my first Legion when I'm reading this in 1994 or 5. I didn't know anything about the prior history of Element Lad or Roxxas or any of that stuff. And so I had no idea. So I'm reading this. I see this idyllic paradise of a world, and then you get that feeling as you're reading it that something's not right, right? Because they kind of foreshadow it with the other attacks prior. But then you see what happens, and it's absolutely devastating. Just well done from that perspective.
Yeah, and it's the art works, the story works. It's just this great single issue, and it is just a gut punch where you're like, holy cow. And I would imagine if you didn't know it was coming,
the cover kind of telegraphs it though too. So.
Yeah. Well, if you're reading it in a trade, then you
that's true. That's true. So let's switch back over to Andromeda a little bit here too, because that's going on. Then you also have a scenario where Andromeda, we have a whole lot of drama going on here, drama with Andromeda. So during the attack on the nightclub, or more like specifically the follow-up to track down Triad's attackers, Vi notices that there are some similarities with the attackers' symbols, and that she might have seen them before, but she doesn't say anything. But then she, later on, she kind of goes through and finds the white triangle necklace in Andromeda stuff, trying to do something nice for her. But the reason why Andromeda is not in her quarters is because she has lead poisoning. Somehow her trans suit got ripped and she is dying from lead poisoning because she was exposed to it just by being on the planet. And so we get this great little moment with her and Brainiac 5 where there's this intimation that Brainiac 5 is attracted to Andromeda, but she's an overt racist. And Brainiac 5 has this little game of, I'm not going to say chess, it's more like a checkers game because Andromeda is being all racist and everything, but basically says, you have to admit that I'm superior because I'm about to save your life. And she has to agree to it, which it comes out, it's done. It's another well done moment, I think, in that storyline.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's a nice issue. I'm a little less positive about it than you are. I think I could see what they were trying to do, and I think at the end of the day, they didn't quite hit the target that they were going for. But it was a great. I mean, it shows Brainiac is kind of like, I don't want to say jerky best, but like he's being a prick, and understandably so, because she's literally going to die if he doesn't come up with the solution, and she's giving him every reason on the planet to not help her. And so I think for me, the issue works better as a Brainiac story than an Andromeda story. And I think that was the failing. There also should have been a change in her behavior afterwards. And I don't think that happened. Like, I think she just got that. And
yeah, not nearly as much as it should have. That's for sure.
So, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the annual. But yeah, like, so that's the funny thing about this story is that like the basic white triangle stuff is going really, really well. And there's some great bits to it. You get the white triangle on Earth, who are a bunch of people who will get like super powered costumes, and they're actually going around killing people. I shouldn't say great, but again, as Jim mentioned earlier, they're escalating the story. So they're going from just being a problem to being actual murderers all over the place.
Yeah.
And so the tension is rising. And then by the time we get to the very end of it, the biggest moment, Andromeda gives the anti-lead serum that Brainiac 5 has cured her with to Roxxas and saying, okay, now you can make a bunch of superpowered white triangle members. And now they don't have to be afraid of lead. They're now all cured. So what do they do? 4 of them, and I don't know why it was only 4. 4 of them arrive on Earth and then proceed to start destroying the planet. So you take 4 Supermen, and they're all murderous, kind of they just viewed all humans as alien and worthy to die. And so they're just going around killing as many people as they can.
Yeah. I mean, my take on it was they wanted the different species to live separately and in their own places. So the fact that everybody's mingling on Earth makes Earth something that needs to be kind of just completely destroyed. And in fact, that being the reason that Trom was destroyed, because it enabled the Stargate technology. That's the element that they created was unique to them. The other thing too is that, and this, I believe this is correct from the reading, is that the serum had to be unique to the individual. So Brainy created the serum for Laurel, but it was based on Laurel's own DNA. She gave her antibodies that were specific to her to all these other Daxamites. And these guys kind of get a little bit weird and get a little bit crazy as they go through and do what they do.
Yeah, and I actually really didn't like that aspect of it. The anti-lead serum is made for one person. Anybody else is going to go crazy if they drink it. But you've already established that this team is a bunch of genocidal murderers.
Yeah.
Which I know is like, the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think you needed to, I don't even want to say like make it more palatable. Like, okay, they're crazy. We already knew they were crazy.
Yeah, they're already a bunch of psychos.
Yeah, like this wasn't necessary. You could have just said, yeah, the serum works and we're good. I mean, the only way that I would have actually been happy with that if they'd said this is going to wear off in like 12 hours because it wasn't made for their bodies. And then suddenly the Legion has hey, if we can hold out for 12 hours or whatever the number is, right? We've got a way around this. And it just seemed like it was something that just didn't need to happen. They're already crazy. They're already,
exactly.
So we end up with this massive battle. And of course, the Legion is completely outgunned here. None of the Legionnaires are really powerful enough to take on a Daxamite, with the exception of the one Daxamite on their team, who they don't really even know is loyal to them.
Right. And she ends up running off prior to the big battle being joined anyway.
So she realizes she's been used. So she flies off to attack Roxxas. And it's not done because she suddenly realized the error of her ways, or she's woken up and said, oh, hey, people are cool. It's I've been used. This person lied to me. So there's no character improvement.
Well, no, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there, but we'll let's put a pin on that, because a couple things we want to get to before we get to the actual annual itself.
Okay.
So two things I wanted to make sure we talk about. First of all is that we get the introduction of the espionage squad as part of this storyline, right? Which is kind of cool. And so we get Invisible Kid, Cam, Vi, Apparition, and Triad as this kind of internal squad in the Legion. And so they're formed to help get information with regards to what's going on for this triangle, and try to, I think they're mainly after the guys, the human members that are on Earth. The other thing that I find is very interesting here is we get a moment with we don't actually understand the full implications yet, but we have a moment with Winna Mawazo, Tinya's mom, and her dad, who I think we might have seen once at this point. Keep me honest on this. I think, don't we find out either a little bit before this or a little bit after this, that he is actually a Kargite?
Don't think they've done that yet.
Okay.
I think all they've established is that her ex-husband is a bit of a, well, loser is a nice way of putting it. and I think it's more to kind of set up does Apparition even know her dad, and it's kind of all done in secret, and this guy's constantly asking his ex-wife for money. And so, yeah, that's an interesting subplot that they're just laying the seeds of there, but I don't think they've gotten into the Kargite yet, or the Kargite storyline yet. And yes, so to be honest, the espionage squad is far more interesting than that one.
But it's something we need to note later on. So
exactly, it's something we definitely need to talk about when next episode, because next episode is going to be all about Phantom Girl or Apparition. Yes. There's your we're doing the pitch to make sure you come back.
It's our foreshadow.
The other interesting subplot on this before we get into, there's two more subplots to kind of talk about.
Okay.
Both of them, I think, kind of miss more than they hit, but they're still there. So one of them is Saturn Girl. Saturn Girl getting regressed to kind of like a child.
Yeah, don't get me started on that one.
And so she's in the hospital. She's acting like she's 2-3 years old, and the only person who can save her is Livewire, is Garth. And I mean, issues before that, she's kind of treating Cosmic Boy like crap, anyways.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, again, I know what they were kind of trying to do, but it doesn't really work. But we get this great moment where Garth shows up and she's like, okay, she's cool again. And then the three of them rejoin by the time we get to the annual. The other one that I know you hate is the whole Ultra Boy Apparition, and I'm using big air quotes, the love story.
Oh, yeah. See, right? I didn't even, that wasn't even in my head. That's how much I hate this relationship in this version of the Legion.
Yeah, but it has to be there because it's the key. It's one of the key gut punch moments in the annual, right?
Exactly. So, okay, I think you're absolutely 100% right that you have to have the romance between Joe and Tinya happen the way it happens here for that upcoming moment to really hit hard. I think my problem with the relationship is what happens after this moment. It's kind of how they do things after this is where I have my problem. But here, right, in this particular moment, it actually works decently, right, from a setup perspective.
See, my problems start right from the beginning, where it's like, okay, he already has a girlfriend.
Yeah. Which would be Spider-Girl in this case.
Yeah, so it's Spider-Girl here. He's already kind of shown to be like, I always sort of go back to this, like, even if it's an expected couple, and I've said this as well about Livewire and Saturn Girl in this reboot version as well, is, okay, we all know they're going to get together, but you still have to show why they get together, and you still have to make the audience buy it, even if they're all expecting it to happen. Like, again, if we're watching Superman and Lois Lane in a movie or a TV show, we know they're going to end up together, but if you can't give me a credible relationship, then it just doesn't work. It's the same with this. So at no point do I like Ultra Boy. At no point do I want these two people together, because he's kind of just a dolt.
Yeah.
And again, he's essentially cheating on his girlfriend. And you're like, hopefully, you'd kind of say, like, hopefully Apparition would have a little more self-respect than that.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is that it kind of turns Tinya into kind of a simp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was my problem with it. I was like, come on.
Well, and especially like a lot of the scenes just seem like they're setting up something else. So for example, like they have this big moment where they get together and she's basically like, yeah, you gave me a cactus, dum-dum. Like, that's not romantic. Yeah. And it could have been sort of this cute little scene, but she basically falls into his arms for like nothing. Yeah. But then we get the white triangle attacking them. So the White Triangle has this murder ball that's flying around Metropolis killing aliens, and it goes and it attacks the two of them, and you're like, okay, so White Triangle are a bunch of dum-dums, because if they know who these two people are, and so they know they're not human, why are you attacking? Ultra Boy is literally the second most powerful being on Earth, right after Andromeda. I think you can make that case. So why would you take that shot? If you're going to kill a Legionnaire, go somewhere else. And so it kind of doesn't really work. And then, so they get them together. And is there anything else we want to talk about before we get into the annual? Did I miss anything?
Well, I guess my challenge here with everything that you're talking about, and I'm in agreement, by the way, my challenge with that situation was that pretty much in all of these cases, Tinya does not have much agency. She's kind of there hanging on the arm of Ultra Boy. And that's where it's a little bit hard for me to swallow. She's just there being kind of looking starry-eyed at Joe the entire time, or kind of telling him what to do and giving him strategy, which is fine because he's kind of dumb. But she does not do much. And that I kind of have a problem.
Yeah, like it wouldn't have been that hard. Again, if you're going to rewrite a story from 30 years ago, like it wouldn't have been that hard to have some scene where you actually show why the two of them are kind of connected. Like I did really like the little bit where she's telling him how to use his powers.
Yeah, right.
Because he's right. And I like, and again, like she had been shown throughout the whole thing of this really strong girl who's standing up to her mom and is, like this fighter, and then she gets with him and it's everything just turns off and she's like, I'm just gonna stand in the background.
Right. I mean, I was going through some of these stories, and there's a really great moment when they recruit Shrinking Violet and the science police are being very blasé about a murder that just happens and making short jokes and all kinds of things like that. And Tinya like throws it back in their face and is really forceful about it. I'm like, yeah, you go, girl. But then, then when she hangs around Ultra Boy, it's like she's like a completely different person. And that's where I have the problem.
Well, I mean, it's the science police in the entire reboot in this post-Zero Hour Legion is just a collection of incompetence and stupidity. I mean, I remember I made this comment when the murder ball was going around killing people, and I'm like, really? No science police? Like somebody just murdered two people? Like,
didn't they have that one that was like he was a cowboy on a robot horse?
God. Oh, yeah. They go to Texas and the science police guy is riding a mechanical horse and talking like he's in 1860s Texas. And I was like, oh, God, please don't. This is just wrong on so many levels. Anyways, we get to the annual, and so the 4 Daxamites have arrived and they're about to destroy Earth. And before we get into this, I just have to make this call out. And I was thinking about this when we were talking to Jeff Moy last episode. What I love the most about this, especially after so many years of DC making annuals completely irrelevant, where it's like, hey, let's do an entire series of annuals where nothing's important and it's not connected to the story at all. And I grew up on the annual being the final chapter. And I don't know if it's New Teen Titans Annual 1 or 2, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's the end of the Blackfire Starfire saga, where they go to Vega and the Omega Men show up, and it's this huge storyline that's going through New Teen Titans, and it all wraps up in the annual, and you're like, yes, so I have a reason to buy this. Or some of those X-Men annuals that like really were keystones to the series. And then DC at some point in the probably late 80s, they just said every annual is like, what was it? Bloodlines, where it's like,
that one was hurtful.
Yeah, like, and so we finally get this. And so I just want to call that out of like, thank you. It's so awesome to see them using the annual the way I want to see them used.
It's funny you mentioned this because I had I had a different experience, right? So I just saw whatever it was that they did. And, in my case, I was mainly reading Batman at the time in the late 80s before I got into the rest of it. It was a very special Batman story, right? It sounds like an after-school special, but, it would be the one that I remember the most was this Two-Face story that was a Batman annual, and it was really good. And I think Chris Sprouse that drew it? I think it was just amazing. It was a really great story, but it didn't really tie into whatever the continuity was in the main title at the time, right? And then you had like the other things. I think the Bloodlines annuals were one thing. Was Eclipso, was that an annual or was that just a special?
Nope, those are annuals.
Yeah, the Eclipses, I didn't care for the Eclipso ones. But anyway, so I got introduced to both sides of it, right? So there was the good stories that were special. Here's a double-sized special issue versus these other ones, these annuals that were just kind of crap. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I mean, when the annual becomes, hey, this is our testing ground for a new artist who's never drawn a comic before, and let's see how they do. Or when they're forced to do this one sort of horrible connection, you're just like, oh god. Like, there was a series of annuals in Marvel where it was the return of the Defenders, and they actually took it was Hulk. I think Doctor Strange had one. And so it was these 3 or 4 annuals where it's this connected story, and they hired good artists, and you got to buy these because you're going to get all of this. And that's what I want to see. I don't want to see, was it Jam?
Yes.
Right.
So I was thinking about this just when you were talking about the Bloodline stuff. We should do, like, we did an episode on like the good storylines. This is one that we have to say for the bad storylines. Absolutely. Because it's so bad. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We have to do it now.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, so this, however, is a good one. Like, this is a great, it's the final chapter of the story. Jeff Moy actually stepped away from the Legionnaires book for, I think, 2 months to draw this, because it's 44 pages of story.
Something like that, yeah.
And it looks beautiful. Like,
it's a wonderfully drawn story.
Yeah.
And one more thing about the annuals, right? So I guess the year before this, in 1994, they were doing the Elseworlds annuals, and those were actually okay. Those were, from the Legion perspective, they were both pretty decent. The Legionnaires one was much better than the LSH one, but all the titles in DC did that, and those were kind of good. Elseworlds kind of tend to be good because you can tell a unique story. And not have to be bothered by continuity ties. This year, in 1995, they were doing the Year One Annual. Obviously, we'd had Zero Hour in 1994, and that was the big thing. In 1995, Year One, right? So a year has passed since 0 Hour. So now we're going to do Year One Annuals. And so most books did, like the Batman and Superman and Robin, they all did stories that were somehow tangential to the origins of the characters. But here, this is kind of cool because you get a story at the end of the first year of comics publications. So this was really, truly a Year One annual story. And it's one of my favorite comic books ever.
You're not going to like me by the time we get to the end of this.
But the reasons that it's one of my favorite books ever is might surprise you. It is not without its problems. Let me just say that.
So, okay. So, all right, let's get into the annual. So I'm just going to say this. I think this is one of the best stories of the whole. So I get where you're coming from. I don't think it's the best post-Zero Hour Legion storyline, but it's.
I agree. I don't disagree with you.
Second or third, but it's up there. And I think, and like I say, like for all the nitpicky complaints that you're going to have to listen to me make, for the most part, I actually did really enjoy this book. And I thought a lot of stuff really, really worked. So the Daxamites have arrived. They're on Earth. The Legionnaires and the Workforce, and we haven't really talked about the Workforce. It is the other teenage super team that Legion foe Leland Macaulay has put together. We'll just say it's a more morally dubious superhero team, to put it nicely. So you've got Ultra Boys actually on that team. They have Karate Kid, they have Spider-Girl, they have Evolvo, they have Inferno. I think I got it right.
And Livewire.
Sorry, and Livewire's on the team as well. I never remember him.
Well, it's an important point, right? Because Livewire was kicked off the team earlier in the year because of shenanigans, and Ayla took his place as the Lightning Wielder in the Legion and the Winneth representative. And then so Garth just goes to join the Workforce so he can keep doing what he wants to do, which is look for his brother.
Which he never actually does. But that's,
Not
that's actually
story.
a plot point. That's a plot point they bring up, actually. So anyway, so both teams are working together. They're trying to stop the Daxamites. And to no real surprise, they're failing at almost every step. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Just the very opening scene are the Daxamites beating the stuffing out of Evolvo and Spider-Girl. And all I could think as I was reading this was like, really, this girl hasn't suffered enough? Like, she's watching her boyfriend cheat on her. She's losing everything. And now she's getting absolutely destroyed. For the entire run, she kind of is just this long-suffering character. And then the Daxamites, as they're going crazier and crazier, they're flying around, destroying things, killing people, and we get, the superheroes trying to stop them, and they just can't. We get
the only one who's really having any success is Ultra Boy, and that's mainly just at a stalemate.
Yeah, because he's the only one who can get invulnerability to deal with that. So there's a moment where Leviathan gets beaten up because he's just essentially a really tall guy, and the Daxamite doesn't have to worry about it. So as this is going on, we get this nice little part again where Livewire Garth shows up at the hospital, starts talking to Saturn Girl, and somehow miraculously cures her. Although I guess the power of love saves everything. And so they head off to go back to Legion headquarters. I'm going to jump around. I'm not going to follow the exact order of the story. Cosmic Boy hands Livewire back his Legionnaire flight ring and says, yeah, you're back on the team. Let's go. And we get the three of them together, and it's sort of set up that they're the final stand against the Daxamites. And I was waiting for like the three of them to fight together and work against, and actually kind of show what they can do. And one of the things that I was really disappointed by is we didn't get that. We didn't get a moment of the three of them. It could have just even been against like one Daxamite, like one sort of moment where it's, okay, we're going to work together. So they set this whole thing up and it's like, hey, here's the three. And they started the team and da-da-da. And I thought that was a big missed opportunity that I think the fans, I would have much rather have seen that than some of the other stuff that they were throwing in the annual.
Well, I don't know. Well, do you mean some of the other encounters that the other team members were having? Is that what you mean? Because that moment that you're talking about, really, it's there to set up the next big reveal, or one of the big reveals in the story.
True. Okay, so let's go back and kind of explain the whole plot point of why the three of them are sort of this last stand. The plan is that Brainiac 5 is hatched and RJ Brand is flying back, and he's got the only Traumite who's still alive, which is Jan Era, who's going to become Element Lad.
Which we don't know yet.
But we don't know this yet. This is a big surprise. So the idea is they're going to essentially build a Stargate at Legion headquarters. The 4 Daxamites fly in and they get rid of them through a Stargate. Okay. But we don't know this. This is all, okay, what's going on? If all they had done was slowed down the building of the Stargate, maybe 3 pages, and let the three of them actually do something together, and maybe not even 3, like 1, just give me a scene where like the three of them are all working together. That's all I wanted. Like, I just wanted to see the three of them in action together, and I didn't get that. Look, again, as I said before, I'm going to nitpick a lot, and that's one of my nitpicks.
That's fine, but you know what? That's a fair criticism. It's a very fair criticism, because honestly, of those 3 characters, the only person that is doing anything is Saturn Girl, because she's the one luring the Daxamites to the trap. Garth and Rock are just kind of standing around watching Brainy put the thing together. So yeah, it's absolutely a fair point, because you could have had Rock helping Brainy, and then you could have had Garth zapping somebody or doing something to help the crowd, or maybe one of the human white triangulars are floating around doing something, causing havoc in the crowd or something like that. But yeah, they're basically just kind of sitting around until the thing happens. Let's back up a little bit before we get to that particular reveal. There's 2 battles going on that are import to the overall plot here. There's the showdown between Andromeda and Roxxas, and then there is the showdown between Ultra Boy and the bald-headed Daxamite that he's been kind of going at it with for pretty much the entire issue here.
Is it bad that we don't know the names of any of the Daxamites?
Well, we do know they do point out some of the names of these guys in here, but I don't think we have that guy's name.
No, but I was going to say, like, they do actually give the names, but at the end of the day, it's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, we don't care. We don't care.
They haven't really established, like, they did set up some of these characters, but it was always just sort of like, okay, here's this evil Daxamite. And at certain points, they had 20 of them, and then they had 5, and then they kind of missed on just giving us villains that we actually kind of cared to see them. They were just sort of, here's the bald guy, and here's the guy with the red hair, and here, like, give us more than that. But yeah, so which one do you want to talk about first? The Andromeda fight or the Ultra Boy fight?
Yeah, all these guys are basically just big old mustache twirling evil guys that just like to kill for fun, which, by the way, there's one of these scenes with XS that is really just a really good example of that, which
and I want to talk about
that I always remember from this book. But let's talk about the Roxxas and Andromeda fight first.
Yeah. So she discovers that she's been used by Roxxas, that Roxxas doesn't really care about her, that she doesn't really have any friends. And also they're threatening to send her back to Daxam, which of course she doesn't want to do because then she loses all of her powers. So she goes and attacks Roxxas, and we get this big fight of Daxamite versus Daxamite. Thoughts?
I think it's kind of naturally where this had to go, because that conflict felt real just because they're both Daxamites, so she knows what's going on here. I'm sure she knows that these other Daxamites are going crazy on Earth here. And she's been used, so she's going to go after him just at a personal spite. So that felt true based on how she'd been portrayed for the prior issues leading up to this. It is rather selfish, but it does set up the plot and kind of gets Roxxas out of the way. And she gets the oh my gosh moment where he took the serum, so he's invulnerable to lead. So it's an evenly matched fight. But we get a couple other really good moments here. One of which is my favorite character coming to save the day.
Yeah. So at one point during the fight, Roxxas just collapses. His body is no longer working the way he thinks it will, and they don't understand why until Violet pops out of his ear because she flew in and threw off his entire equilibrium. I mean, again, so why did she leave? Because they just stay in there and keep messing it up. And then the guy, he doesn't get a second wind, but of course we have that reveal and then he gets back and the fight continues. And then we get the big moment where I think he knows he's going to lose. He opens up, what did I write down?
Yeah, it's like a nuclear reactor of some kind.
He opens up like an atomic furnace and this green flame hits and Violet flies away. And the conversation is like, even this will kill a Daxamite. And then the assumption is both of them have died in this blast. And then we get this big reveal at the end of the comic that she actually isn't dead. She's in jail and she turned herself in. Right. She turned herself in and saying, I'm responsible for this. Just send me to prison. But there's no Roxxas. So, of course, they've written themselves the out. So if they want to bring him back, they can say, well, if she survived, he survived. And then she gets this moment of, I guess, reflection. So for me, this hit about 50% of what I wanted out of the scene. And it missed on some really big stuff, because after reading all of these stories, I honestly don't care what happens to Andromeda. She does not get a redemption arc. She doesn't get a moment where she realizes the error of her ways. Not really.
And
at no point is she doing anything where you're like, wow, this is somebody I want to cheer for. So when you think she dies, I just don't care.
I can't disagree with a lot of what you said there. I think there's moments of regret there, because there's a moment where she's saying, I could have been friends with these people. But to me, that came across, again, as a little more selfish, right? It's her saying, I have all these powers, but I could have had friends too. Well, you also could have had friends if you weren't a jerk. You know what I mean? So you're right. That doesn't hit as from a redemption perspective for sure. So,
if there had been again, we're rewriting an old comic book, but to me, there had to be something more to make her angry at Roxxas aside from, you don't care about me. Because even after Brainy saves her, she's still like, yep, here's my anti-lead serum. Let's keep doing this. So she hasn't learned anything from that. She hasn't learned anything from Brainy saving her.
I mean, I kind of think she did, but I think the problem with the story is that they didn't really expand on any of that realization, because she starts really going after Roxxas once she realizes that he wants to basically sterilize everything. I don't think she agrees with this, right? And she does some of the right things, but not really just told why, outside of just assuming it's more selfish motivation.
Yeah, so, like my thought is,
a problem.
If they had done a scene, so when she gets her lead poisoning originally, so that Brainy has to save her, if Roxxas had been the one who gave her the lead poisoning, let's just rewrite this whole thing where we say, sorry, she has a showdown. She does a showdown with Roxxas. Roxxas is like, yeah, we don't need you anymore. You're useless. You got us in. And let's say Roxxas basically stabs her with a lead knife. And so now she's just been betrayed by the person that she thinks is most important. Now, and then they get the anti-lead serum some other way that wouldn't have worked. And so she's now sitting in the hospital, Brainy's saving her, and she's questioning everything. I think we have a more dramatic reveal, but instead, selfish is a really good word. At no point do you think she's doing anything aside from her own wants and needs. So that when she ends up in prison at the end, I'm like, I don't care. You need those moments. Like, you need to have, sorry for this comparison, but I'll just go with it. You think of a movie like American History X, where you have this main character who's horrible and believes horrible things, and you really aren't supposed to like him. And he needs to have a moment where he wakes up, and you need to see that change. And we just didn't get that. So at the end of the day, it was almost like they were expecting you to care for her because she was the Supergirl analog, rather than actually give you a reason to care about her.
I mean, for anything, it made Shrinking Violet more heroic in the whole.
Well, so that's the other thing. Imagine if they had rewritten that scene where Roxxas is literally about to kill her, and then suddenly he collapses and she's like, what's wrong? And Violet pops out and she's like, oh, the only reason I'm still alive is because of you.
Right.
That's now 2 Legionnaires who've saved my life. Maybe I have to rethink what I'm doing.
Right.
But instead we just kind of get and again, like, one of the great things about Violet in this series is she's shy, but she's an ass kicker.
Yeah.
And it would have been the fact that she's taking down a Daxamite when nobody else is. It was a nice touch that he didn't really do enough with. There was so many. Yeah. It was just a missed opportunity.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where you have you need to show just a little bit extra.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, did we need, like, I'll just point this out. Did we need to see Karate Kid in Cape Town being a jerk? That's panels you could have just gotten rid of, because he looks horrible. He says horrible things during the fight, and then he gets taken out super quick. And then it makes no sense because he's lying on the ground bleeding and the Daxamite just flies away. And you're like, why wouldn't he have just killed him right there?
It was kind of cool to see Karate Kid like do damage to a Daxamite.
Yeah.
that was a cool moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. But it's like, but everything else, you're just like,
didn't serve the story all that much.
No,
all that, for sure.
No.
So okay,
All
let's go to the other big moment where
this is the biggest one. So.
Yes, the I would say the controversial moment of this particular issue. We were talking about Ultra Boy and Apparition fighting this one particular Daxamite, and throughout the fight, Tinya is basically telling Joe what to do as far as what powers to activate and things like that, which is fine. Joe's kind of dumb, so they end up falling down into a garden of some kind, and then we have this lovers moment between them, but the Daxamite is down but not out by any means. And then what happens?
And so as they are declaring their love for each other and they get together in a big embrace and a kiss, the Daxamite, I won't say wakes up, stands up and blasts them both with heat vision, turning Apparition into a charred skeleton, essentially. Yeah. And so Ultra Boy is left holding this girl that he barely knows, but has declared his love for. We get our second Legion death in this series, but our first consequential Legion death, because Kid Quantum 1 dying was only really existed to teach Leviathan a lesson.
Exactly. And it's I remember at the time this is a wild moment picking this book up and seeing this happen. It's done to devastating effect, because not only does Tinya, prior to this moment, she tells him to be tough, meaning go invulnerable, which he doesn't switch out of. So when they have this moment, they declare love. He's in his invulnerable mode, and of course she is not. But if she had been a phantom, she could have avoided that, right? But she wasn't, because she's giving Joe a big hug and kiss, and then she gets fried. Interesting little bits of setup there.
Yeah, it was. I got to be honest. This was the first comic of this reboot where I was actually like jaw open. I can't believe they did this.
Yeah.
I was stunned that they went with this. I think it worked really, really well. It's a dramatic moment that stands out in the series, and it does show how dangerous the whole situation is. And art-wise, Moy does a great job capturing the whole scene.
Yeah, I remember when this happened in the online community in 1995. Again, this OL was the big thing, and the Usenet message boards. People freaked the hell out when this happened online, and you had everybody from this is a great dramatic moment. I love this. I was one of those people as a new Legion reader, and all to the gamut of I'm never picking this book up again. How dare they do this with one of my heroes? So it caused a huge splash. Now, I will say the killing of Tinya isn't necessarily bothersome to me, but what does bother me about this particular moment, which is what we mentioned before, is that she is there just to be a sacrificial lamb. She has no agency whatsoever, and that bothers me about this particular moment. As good as it is, this is one aspect that really bothers me about this particular couple of pages.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I am okay if they're going to kill off a character, if they give the character a hero's death. But again, I think that's maybe why this shock worked so well, is because it was so out of the blue. I mean, my argument would be, you're in the middle of a battle. Why would you? And you've just told your quote boyfriend to go invulnerable. Why wouldn't you protect yourself and wait? But they're teenagers and they're dumb. So I mean, that's part of it. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, if she had been saving something and that was the result, or if in the middle of the fight, like that was what happened, I'd be like, okay, cool. Like that's. And I agree. Like it's more just done of a, hey, we have this nice romantic moment, surprise, and then like, and it gets everybody.
Although I will say, and this is one of the things that I love about this book so much, is that it has a moment right in here that foreshadows what's to come in the months and years ahead with this book.
Yeah, which we'll talk about more next episode.
Okay.
Just as a teaser. So,
all right,
but
so
yes,
it's okay. Well, we'll leave that one there then.
Yeah,
because
we'll leave that one there because we're like I say, next episode is all Phantom Girl and all Apparition. We have a ton to talk about with what they do after this. But yeah, I mean, so to wrap everything up, like they open up the Stargate, they send the Daxamites to this uninhabited planet that is around
a red sun.
has a red sun, so they no longer have any powers. Do they ever go back to these characters?
No. They never go back to any of the Daxamites other than Andromeda when she becomes a nun. Well,
there's no consequences. So anyway, so they get all this. We get the big reveal that Andromeda is not actually dead, even though she now has a statue. So there's now 3 statues in the Legion Hall of Memories, or whatever it's called, a memorial hall. So you've got Kid Quantum 1, and you've got Apparition, and you've got Andromeda. Cosmic Boy now has to keep this big secret. We get Livewire back on the team, which is the other big moment. And we end up with Jan Era joining as well, basically because he has nowhere else to go. I know they couldn't have done this, but why isn't he going after these Daxamites? Like,
I know. Well, it's kind of interesting here, and I was thinking about this when I was rereading this. That the reveal of Jan is done it's cool, right? I turn the page, the way it reads in my book, right? You turn the page, and Cosmic Boy is kind of narrating this, and you see Janara pop out and do his Tarnium thing here, and it's just really cool. It's just a really cool reveal. And by the way, I think Jan kind of looks badass here, and this is why I kind of was more interested in this character at this point, because he has a really cool look with that white mantle that he has on his costume. I think they should have kept for his full deal. It looks a lot better than what he actually ends up with. But he has a super serious look on his face, and I just really liked how they introduced him, how they actually showed him and portrayed him in this particular book. And I wish that they had kind of kept this more serious. I don't know if I'd go as far as vengeful, because we get dark Jan Era later on, but just this very serious kid, and unlike the kind of the flighty, flaky guy we get later on in the series.
But just imagine, I don't even mean vengeful. Just imagine a scene later on where like Jan shows up on that planet where those 4 Daxamites are, or maybe they're in Takron Galtos, and he walks in and he just basically says, like, according to Traumite religion, I forgive you. And like, they could do that. They could actually play it as something very, very different and show him as this, like, I've moved on, like, but just say it, just so that the 4 of you know, I could turn all 4 of your blood into lead right now. And instead, I'm going to let you live with the guilt of everything that you did. And your lives are over, and you've got another like 60 years in this prison, and you're never getting out. Like that would have been a great like Secret Files story, or something like just this little moment. I like an 8-page story in an annual when they were doing that, and just have him go like, look, I could do this, and because I am better than you, right? You think that you're superior to everybody. I mean, I hate to say this, but that's what I always come back to with the post-Zero Hour Legion, is that my brain always goes to like, they could have done this, or they could have done this. And it always kills me, right? Like, I'm just like, I wish they had done, like, this would have been so cool. And instead they turned him into a super hippy dippy guy who everybody was avoiding. And you're like, that's not Jan. Like,
well, I was always surprised that they never did anything with Roxxas after that. Yeah, because obviously we see the reveal of Andromeda at the very end here, being in the prison, and she looks none worse for wear. So one would be forgiven to think that probably the same is true for Roxxas as well somewhere. But and again, that would have been a great story to revisit.
Yeah, exactly. And they could have done a lot with that. There's a lot of, I mean, at the end of the day, again, I'm nitpicking like crazy. I did actually enjoy this issue, and I enjoyed the annual actually more than a lot of the individual pieces leading up to it. And I think it's definitely worth checking out. This whole storyline is worth checking out. If you've never read it, it's a really good, sorry that we spoiled everything, but it's a really good, well, I'm not really sorry. It's a really good look at the team, and you get a lot of really nice team dynamics. Like, buried in here is also Triad's origin story, which is awesome. There's just some really nice moments that are going on, and some really great artwork in a lot of the issues as well between Moy and I'm not the biggest Lee Moder fan on the Legion. I think he's far better on other books, but he's got some good stuff. I think this was before he kind of started feeling like he was getting burnt out. So he's still bringing a lot of energy. They get a great, I mean, her art style, they get a great Joyce Chen issue. Joyce Chen. And like really early in her career. And it's very different, but it's a really interesting take on the Legion, even if, and you get the espionage squad in there. It's just an interesting read.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we get a couple other things too. I remember when we were talking to Jeff about some of the fill-in artists. I think it's Mark Farmer.
We get Mike Collins. Mike Collins does a couple.
Mike Collins, thank you. Mike Collins does the fill-in. And I think it's like we talked with Jeff, right? Partially because Corey Kirani does a lot of the inking on it, it doesn't feel off, right? So even though you can tell it's different, but it doesn't look vastly different than what we would see. Whereas Joyce's work, I mean, I really like her work, although my only criticism about her work is that it was a little bit distracting because especially the female characters looked like they were models in some kind of a hair commercial. Hair shampoo commercial.
Yeah, there's a lot of great hair. There's a lot of great, like Apparition. It looks like she's just walked out of a Pantene commercial, and the hair's flying.
And there's
back.
one of the
I
white
agree with
triangle ladies that's the same way. It's like, oh, okay, come on.
I agree.
You don't
But
look like you're really being tortured when you look like you just, did the whole hair toss thing.
True. I agree with you. We've said this before, and I can't say it enough. A good inker who knows what they're doing, who can make books not look the same, but keep a certain style and keep and Karani's great at that. He just does an amazing job. So I give all credit.
The other thing I want to make sure we talk about with this particular book is that the annual specifically is that it does a good job of wrapping up things. So we talked about how the Legion started with this white triangle story effectively. And then, we have all these character introductions and character death and all these other things. And then this white triangle thing starts to build up again, culminating in here. But in this issue as well, we also start seeding the next year of issues because there's a couple things that we have here. The fact that Andromeda is actually really alive and secretly in a prison is part of a significant storyline with the president of the UP that's also here as very manipulative. And then the other big deal is very hard to miss. And this is something that I missed the very first time that I read this back in 1995, partially because I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. When the Stargate is opened, Pattern Girl gets a vision of Valor / Largand / Mon-El, which is also a significant part of the next year of stories. And then there's the other thing, right? The other thing that we mentioned about Tinya that we shall not mention on this episode, but we will talk about later, we promise. This is why I love this story so much, because it seeds the ground for other things that are going to happen. It's one of the reasons that I think I like this run so much is because where you had, when we talk about the Baxter series with Levitz, you had the ABC stories like a good sci-fi author or a TV series would have. This does it's different, right? Because it's doing seeding of stories that start popping up later on, and then they bear fruit, really good fruit, in the next year. It's one of the reasons that this particular book is so near and dear to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, any good comic writer should be sowing the seeds for what's to come, and they do that. I do agree. That's nice. I just realized, sorry, as you were talking, there's two other things that we forgot to talk about for this annual, and one we did mention. So one is excess in Japan.
Yeah.
And the Daxamite just murders somebody in front of her.
Yes.
It's a really powerful scene. I just wanted to call it out because it's really dramatic. It really stands out. I do wish they had done something with it. Like it kind of just felt like it was there. Excess just kind of sees it happen, and you're like, wait, you're one of the only people who's actually as fast as a Daxamite.
Yeah.
I don't want her to turn violent, but they could have done more with that moving forward in the future. But it's a very dramatic moment. I wanted to call that out. And again, like Excess is one of my favorite characters in this series. So anytime they give her something, I probably just always want more, which is probably bad. The other one, correct me if I'm wrong, this is Mark Waid's last issue, right?
Yes, this is the last issue where he is credited as a contributor. I think this is the end result of the summit that they had. So when they did the 0 Hour relaunch, and we talked about this a little bit with Jeff, but he wasn't a part of this. I guess Mark Waid, Casey Carlson, and Tom Peyer and Tom McGraw all went and kind of huddled and outlined what they wanted to do for that first year. And so this was the end result of that first year. So this makes sense that Mark gets credit, but he is not involved further on. In fact, he's been a little bit critical of where they took the Legion after this when they started redoing a lot of Silver Age stories.
I just wanted to ask, have you read anything? And this is an ask to the listeners as well. Please comment. Do we know why he left after a year? Was it just he had other books?
I think he was just doing other stuff. Like he was deeply involved in the Flash, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And Impulse, and probably lots of other stuff too. So I think he was really focusing on other things that were non-Legion related directly anyway.
Yeah. Because it is always one of those things that I find interesting, because Wade has always been like, I love the Legion, I love the Legion, I love the Legion. And yet both legions that he's been involved with, he left fairly early, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't, and so I always wonder if it's one of those things where it's that be careful what you wish for moment where like it,
I don't
know.
Yeah, I don't think this was so much him leaving as he was there to help relaunch and set this first year up. Him being one of the story contributors, he gets credit for it, but he's not super involved by the time they actually write and create this issue. He's already doing other stuff. So I don't think this one had the stench on it, if you will, as happened in the 3-boot.
Yeah. I will just say this. I wish he hadn't have left, because I really think I actually agree with him that they went too much Silver Age after he left.
He has a point.
It was always funny for me reading these books, because I prefer the art in Legionnaires, but I prefer the stories in Legion of Superheroes. And Wade's the one writing the Legion of Superheroes stuff. And I always thought those were just a little bit better written. But I mean, cards on the table, I've never been a huge Tom Pyre fan. Like, no matter what he's done, I've always found him to be okay. Like, he knows how to write a comic book. He's professional. He knows his stuff. But I don't think I've ever really had a bunch of stuff that he's done where I've gone, wow, whereas Wade's got wow stuff and I think if he had been there for 5 years, I think it's maybe a different story. But
it's a good question. Tom's work, I definitely think he's an excellent editor for sure. Some of his stuff on the other comic labels that he works on, I think is fantastic. It's really good. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the, if you're going to have a strike against this particular era of Legion, right, it's that the consistency isn't really there as much as it really could have been. There's lots of reasons for that, and it runs the gamut of everybody that's involved in the comic book.
Exactly. It's a team effort. You don't want to just put it at one person's feet. As I mentioned, this isn't even my favorite story of this reboot, so I can make the case that McCraw and Pyre by themselves wrote my favorite of this era. And we'll probably do that big focus on Emerald Vi at some point in time.
Oh, yeah. I guess I think sometime in the next calendar year we'll eventually get to Vi.
Exactly.
That.
And then it'll be and then that will be the longest episode we will ever do, because Jim will talk about Violet for 6 hours, and
I promise.
And I will try to and then of course the Wildfire episode. I will beat that. So
and that'll be sometime in 2029.
Exactly. So I will start preparing now. I will get everything ready. Anyways, so just to kind of wrap everything up, I just got to go back to, if you haven't read this, read this. If you haven't, I mean, like, Jim just did an amazingly good trade school episode on the first trade paperback of Legionnaires. You get those first two, so that's the original one, and this one's the second trade, right?
Yes. Yeah. What we did is in the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a great Legionnaire story. I think you can see how much work and how much time and how much planning went into this. And I, for all of my little problems and for all of my, insane desire to rewrite stories that are this old, it's, I do highly recommend it. It's a great way to get into the Legion too, because you kind of get introduced to these people. So
exactly.
What else to say?
Probably the best part about it.
Yeah. And I will say this, if you haven't listened to the trade school episode that Jim did, please check that out, because it is very, very good.
And it's short. It's like 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
You can
Unlike
eat
these.
You can listen to while you're eating your cereal.
Let's move on to the next item on our mission monitor board, which is email.
All right.
We've got a bunch of emails, so please, Jim, take it away.
Well, there's two I'm going to talk about for sure. So we had a listener, Julio Santos, emailed us and said, "Hi, I discovered your podcast with your crossover with the Men of Steel. Thank you. The Legion's my favorite team since I was a child. Since you asked for suggestions for your show, here are a few. A show on alien races that have been introduced in the Legion, a show on Legion members that have only belonged to one version of the Legion, and one which ones you would like to pick to join the new version of the Legion." And we kind of talked about that already. So a show on the Legion of Supervillains and its members, and which are your favorites. Jay and I have talked about an LSV episode. I don't think we have it on our docket, but we definitely have one on the alien races that is on the list at some time. I don't know. If we're lucky, we'll get to it sometime in 2026. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the time goes, because we've also been having, and again, apologize for not having your emails sooner, but we've had a lot of things going on with the interview with Jeff last week.
I just want to say one thing about the villains and about the Legion of Supervillains. So we've heard a few people comment on how they want us to talk about villains. So we are going to talk about one of them that's coming up soon. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but we've heard you, and we agree. Like I want to spend some time really deep diving into a lot of these villains as well. That sounds horrible, but deep diving into the characters. So that's definitely coming, and keep those suggestions going. My only problem with the Legion of Super Villains is there's just too many characters to talk about. Because again, I think we could do an entire episode just Lightning Lord. So we'll probably just pull him out and then, but I mean, Saturn Queen.
Oh, well, that's why I think, with Saturn Queen and Micro Lad, I think we could probably do an episode of just the LSV itself too.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. But yeah.
And I want a whole episode on Lazon. Come on.
Oh God. All right. So our next email is from our friend of the show, Kirby. And so it's a long email, so I'm going to try to summarize as much as I can and abridge a little bit here. He's responding to our Bronze Age episode from a few episodes ago. He first read the era in its entirety a few years ago, and you can find my blow-by-blow thoughts on the Discord. So there's the Legion Discord that we have up that you can join. Kirby, if you go into the 70s era Legion channel that we have, he has a whole breakdown of kind of all the stuff that he was reading, and it's really good. You gave Bates a fair assessment. One of the reasons I tend to defend him is that in growing up in an era of very decompressed storytelling, it is really refreshing to just read simple one-and-done adventures. While he may have been cleaning house with getting rid of a lot of characters, I felt he at least gave them dignity, unlike other eras later down the line. He also co-created one of the best Legionnaires of all time with Wildfire, where not only his introduction a classic, but issue 201, where he officially joins, I think is a must-read too. And I think we both agree with that. Cockrum's original design of Wildfire, I would put up there with Barry Allen and Spider-Man as having a perfect costume right out of the gate. No notes. If we have to lose Cockrum, I will take Mike Grell, who is my all-time favorite comic book artist. Between Legion and Warlord, Grell was determined to give someone, regardless of gender or sexuality, an awakening. He delivered such stunning artwork time after time. Dawnstar stands out as another top 5 Legionnaire for me because she was never a wallflower, and Grell and Levitz helped create a great relationship dynamic with Wildfire, which is one of the best tragic romances in comics. It is an absolute crime that Vince Coletta inked the Saturn Girl / Lightning Lad wedding tabloid. That never made sense to me, because if they knew it was going to be a big event, just give him the time to either ink it himself or get almost anyone else besides Coletta to ink him. I think Earth War should be talked about in the same breath as Great Darkness Saga, if only James Sherman had not quit halfway through. That is my understanding, that he did not like what Levitz had planned for the story and why Joe Staten had to rush to finish it. Sherman and some of the inkers did some of my favorite detail touches in comics, where Wildfire's visor would reflect, and the reflection would bend around the shape of his visor like it would in real life. 2 opening splash pages he did of Earth War are pieces of original art that I would love to have. And then on the Conway era, the majority of his stories do feel like JLA plots he had tossed in the trash originally. Only real positive is that we get Block to join the team, even if it will take it till Levitz for him to really evolve into what I love about him. And then the Wildfire origin story, which came in a little bit later, is easily the best of Roy Thomas's short run in the series, who never got a handle on what it was about. I do not mind the more Marvel origin here because, as you said, Wildfire was the first more contrarian member to join the team, so thematically I think it fits. Combination of the Thing and Hawkeye. The only thing that it might be Thomas's slight retconning, taking Drake Burroughs from an astro engineer to astro engineering student. And so I didn't include everything, but that's the big gist of Kirby's thoughts here. What do you think, Jake?
There's a lot. So I'm obviously not going to disagree with any Wildfire praise. I agree. At the end of the day, you can make a very good argument that the Legion has never looked better than during the Bronze Age. You have Cockrum and you have Grell and you have Sherman, and those are 3 of the most talented Legion artists. And I agree with him. If Sherman was faster, but he wasn't going to be with the amount of work that he was putting into the pages. I think Earth War would have been bigger. I actually kind of agree that if Levitz maybe had done a little bit less with Earth War, it would have been a better story, and maybe Sherman was right on that. The one other thing I'm going to say is, when we talk about Mike Grell, we have the Legion, we have Warlord, and we have John Sable Freelance. And if you haven't checked out that one, that's Grell at his peak. Green Arrow Longbow Hunters, which is just a stunningly good-looking book. I could talk about Grell all day. I won't. I'll just say it's I agree with almost everything there. And I did love the Wildfire origin story, but as I've admitted many times, I'm so staggeringly biased that means nothing. So I own that. So yeah.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. So let's talk about one of the things we started doing here on the podcast is to talk about what we've been reading lately. What's kind of on the top of your list that is your go-to these days?
Okay, so I've got something that I just finished reading, and I'm way behind on this. And I found it in a comic shop, didn't really think about it I didn't even think they existed, and kind of grabbed this. We've been talking a lot about trade paperbacks, as I just mentioned with Trade School. And there's a Fantastic Four trade paperback that I bought actually before the movie came out. And it took me a super long time to read because it's a gigantic book. It is the Marvel Premier Collection. It's Fantastic Four Solve Everything. It's collecting, I think, I want to almost say, so from issue 570 to issue 582. So I'm getting, like a year of comics. I've always loved the Fantastic Four, and I've always kind of missed the series for some crazy reason. I don't know why. And I hadn't read anything that Jonathan Hickman had written on this. So it was kind of my first taste of it. I love that both Marvel and DC are doing these smaller trades, and they're cheaper, and you can get kind of a big kick on it. It's just a great series, and really enjoyed it. Right? Definitely worth checking out. So yeah, that's what I just finished, and can't say enough good things about it. I know I'm probably the last to the party and everybody else has already talked about it, but yeah, that's what I've been enjoying. How about you?
So one of the things that has been going on for the past year, right, and we've seen this from Superman and all this other stuff in the current all-in universe in DC Comics, has been this absolute line, right? So absolute Superman, absolute Batman. This is all happening in the universe of the Legion of Darkseid, apparently, from what we understand from the events of the last couple of months. And so there's these absolute titles for all these mainstream heroes that are taking place in this universe. To my mind, and I've read almost all of them at this point. I've not picked up the absolute Green Lanterns yet, but the best one out there that is top of my go-to list whenever it comes out on that particular week is Absolute Martian Manhunter by Dennis Camp and Javier Rodriguez. It is so abstract and so good and so different from literally anything else that's out there right now that it's my favorite thing to see. It's like if you were to give David Lynch, the late David Lynch, R.I.P., the ability to write a comic book, I feel like this is what you would get, because all of the concepts and the art is so, like I said, abstract and different, but also well drawn and well told and well written. It's just an amazing book, and it's the first thing that I go to when it comes out on that week, which I think is like the last week of the month. I can't say enough about it, and I highly recommend it to everybody, especially because it's not your typical absolute story. So the rest of the absolute universe very much doubles down on the particular hero, the Superman, the Batman, and each of them have their own kind of mini, almost a legendarium of just that particular character stuff going on. Nobody's really crossed over into anybody else yet, but it's all the kind of stuff that you expect. You have Batman with his rogues gallery that are starting to form, and they're the people that you expect. Same thing with Superman, although you do have Ra's al Ghul in Superman for some reason, which I guess we'll find out. But the Martian Manhunter stuff kind of seems to stand alone from all of that. We don't get any reference to the Peacemakers or the Omega Corps or whatever they're calling them. I'm blanking on it right now, but we only get one little tidbit. There was a couple issues ago where you see Darkseid at the end of it. That's the only little tidbit that you get that's part of this. So it kind of stands apart from all the rest of the absolute stories. And so you can kind of read it and not feel like you even need to know who Martian Manhunter is, because it's told so differently and in such a well done way. So I could keep on going. Please read this. It's a fantastic comic book.
Nice. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I've heard really good things about it, and I find myself as a lot of times going like, there's too much good stuff to read, and I don't have time in the day, and so that I can move that to the top of my list. It's crazy.
It's crazy the amount of good stuff that's coming out of DC lately. Not everything is oh my god amazing, but it's all like consistently pretty good, and which is a really great thing.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've been reading and so a lot of the comments I've seen, it seems like Marvel's got a lot of catching up to do. DC seems to be, like riding to the forefront as far as that. And I think the best eras of comics are when DC is really pushing the creativity on their titles. So that's
for sure.
Perfect. Okay. So Jim, where can everybody find you on the internet?
All right. So I have my Legion reviews website at jimboslegion.blogspot.com, where I try to post one new comic a week that is somehow Legion related. You can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social, on Reddit at jimbofett87, and on Discord as jimbofett on the Legion Fan Club Discord. How about you?
So I post reviews of 2 comics every week, and I do this super long because I'm crazy. You can find that at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. And right now I am just wrapping up Legion of Three Worlds, which has been fun and not fun. We'll just put it that way. You can find me on Blue Sky at jmckiernan.bsky.social. You can find me on both Reddit and on Discord under the name Drake Burrows. And where can they find this podcast?
Well, if you want to follow the podcast or get access to the Legion Discord, we are at longlivethelegion.bsky.social, or send us an email and tell us what you think at longlivethelegion2025@gmail.com. And while you're out there looking at the podcast, please give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. That really helps us out. Hell, give us 2 5-star reviews. That would be even better, right? So until then, we will see you out there, and long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.
All right, Josue, let's go through our new Comic Day stack. We have a lot to review.
I know. Maybe we've gone too far.
Well, let's see. Marvel, of course. DC.
I got Image, Dark Horse,
Black Mask, Boom, IDW.
Aftershock, Vault, of course, Mad Cave,
Oni, Valiant, Scout.
Magma, Behemoth.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, all we need now is a name for our show. We need a name for a show about reviewing comic books every week. Something clever, but not too clever.
Like a pun? It's kind of cheesy.
Yeah, it's something that seems funny at first, but we might regret later on as an impulsive decision a few dozen episodes in.
Yeah, we'll think of something.
Join Keith and Josue for We Have Issues, a weekly show reviewing almost every new comic released each week. Available on Geek Elite Media and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.